get a spacecraft back, go over it again, be sure that we could reuse it, repair it where we had to do. It had never been done before. And so I think that's one of the marvelous things about the space shuttle was we found a way to turn this spacecraft around and use it again.
Before the end of 1982, Columbia would fly 4 more missions.
Liftoff of America's space shuttle,
including STS-5, the first with a crew of more than 2 astronauts. Challenger, the second orbiter in the shuttle fleet, made her maiden flight on April 4th, 1983.
And liftoff of the orbiter Challenger and the 6th flight of the space shuttle.
STS-6 deployed a communication satellite and featured the first spacewalk of the shuttle era. Just 2 months later, Shuttle Challenger was back in orbit, this time with the first American woman in space. Physicist Dr. Sally Ride was a member of Commander Bob Crippen's STS-7 crew that deployed Canadian and Indonesian satellites during the 6-day mission. Challenger was ready for flight in less than 2 months, another massive first. Shuttling the first African American to space, and Air Force combat pilot Guy Bluford.
For me, it was an exciting moment because it was something that I had been training for 15 to 16 months, and so I was looking forward to the experience of flying in space.
We are in an era of brotherhood.
We have liftoff of mission 41D, the first flight of the orbiter Discovery.
From 1984 to 86, the newest orbiter Discovery would fly a record 6 missions.
And liftoff of mission 51D and the 7-member crew of Discovery.
Carrying into space satellites, international astronauts, even a U.S. senator and a congressman. 1 year after Discovery's debut, Atlantis flew her first mission.
Liftoff of Atlantis. A new orbiter joins the shuttle fleet and it has cleared the tower.
STS-51J. It was also one of 7 classified missions the space shuttle would fly for the Department of Defense. By the end of 1985, the space shuttle program had completed 23 missions, including 9 that year alone. Each successful flight had the unintended consequence of convincing some that spaceflight, once considered among humankind's most inherently dangerous endeavors, had become routine. That notion would soon be tragically dispelled.
Well, I am so excited to be here.
Amid much fanfare, Krista McAuliffe, an elementary school instructor from Concord, New Hampshire, had been chosen from among 11,000 applicants to be NASA's first teacher in space.
I would like to humanize the space age by giving a perspective from a non-astronaut, because I think the students will look at that and say, this is an ordinary person. This ordinary person is contributing to history, and if they can make that connection, then they're going to get excited about history, they're going to get excited about the future, they're going to get excited about space.
The American public's interest in its space program was renewed by her participation and was eager to see her off. Commanding the flight was Dick Scobie. His pilot was Michael Smith. Serving as Challenger's mission specialists are Judy Resnick, Ellison Onizuka, and Ron McNair. Joining McAuliffe as a payload specialist was Greg Jarvis. From the start, STS-51L was plagued by delays, mostly due to unseasonably cold temperatures in Florida. Rather than give pause for thought, the delays only tried the nation's patience. Everyone, it seemed, was itching to go. January 28th, the ground temperature at Launch Pad 39B was a frigid 36 degrees. Ice could be seen on the launch vehicle. Despite concerns voiced by some, shuttle managers reluctantly decided to press ahead for a late morning liftoff.
6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Challenger, go with throttle up.
At 11:39 Eastern, twice the speed of sound, the Challenger's fuselage breaks apart from the inside out. America's space program suffers its first fatalities in flight.
God, no.
all 7 Challenger crew members perish.
Okay, everybody, stay off the telephones. Make sure you maintain all your data. Start pulling it together.
We come together today to mourn the loss of 7 brave Americans, to share the grief that we all feel, and perhaps in that sharing to find the strength to bear our sorrow and the courage to look for the seeds of hope.
The investigation, headed by former Secretary of State William Rogers, would fault a solid rocket booster O-ring, rendered defective by the bitter cold. But the Commission's findings also addressed the human factor, the role played by shuttle program managers in sending Challenger aloft that day. The shuttle program came to a halt. It took more than 2.5 years of arduous engineering analysis and painful soul-searching before a retooled and reborn shuttle would return to flight.
Challenger was tough because it not only represented a breakdown in communications, but it represented everything that's wrong or wrong about an agency like we are, where segments of the agency weren't talking to each other and didn't know everything that we should know.
We thought we knew where all the risks were and had them pretty well contained. The solid rocket boosters that caused the accident, obviously there was something that had slipped through. So we went back throughout the complete vehicle, all the systems, and did a complete review and trying to find any other things that we may have missed that may be lurking there.
When things are really starting to look smooth and you're starting to get maybe overconfident in a way, then it's time for you to step back, think about what you're doing, go back and look, do some additional testing, and see if there's something that you really hadn't anticipated that is going on with your systems.
During a lot of that time, we got a lot of criticism that maybe the agency had lost its edge. There were folks inside the agency that started losing their confidence, thinking maybe we can't do this anymore. 2.5 years later, when we flew and then landed that flight, it showed that no, we really can overcome really, really large problems, really tough technical problems today, just like we could 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or 50 years ago. That was an important milestone.
And liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
On September 29, 1988, 975 days after the loss of Challenger and her crew, the orbiter Discovery returned 6 veteran astronauts to space to deploy a tracking and data relay satellite important to a number of NASA missions. STS-26 proved a comeback milestone for the space shuttle and initiated a tradition that survives with the program today.
During the flight, we had roses show up in the Mission Control Center. 6 roses, 5 red, 1 white. And there was a card attached to it, and it simply said, "Congratulations, return to flight. We wish you well." And it was signed Mark, Terry, and Mackenzie Shelton. Didn't know who they were, but after the flight, we through the Foro company, we tracked them down so we could send them some pictures and something to thank them for sending the roses to Mission Control. So the next flight, roses show up again. And again, it's 5 roses for the members of the crew and 1 rose for those who have lost their lives in this endeavor. And so this family, they have become part of our family, and they haven't missed a flight since. Every flight since that time and to date, and I suspect they're going to go right with us to the end of the shuttle program.
STS-26 ended on October 3, 1988, at Edwards Air Force Base, California,
Standing by for nose gear and touchdown.
with Discovery's safe landing on runway 17. The triumphant crew was greeted warmly by Vice President George Bush on behalf of a proud and grateful nation.
There's something special about a return to flight that makes you have some trepidation because it's still fresh in your mind that you're frail and you can make mistakes and you're human.